Aloha, everyone. I hope you guys are having a great Labor Day weekend. So this week we'll have two video lectures, part 1 and part 2 of the Indic traditions. Today we'll just have sort of a basic overview of the Indic traditions, and then tomorrow I'll have another video up with some more specifics of Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and Sikhism. So you'll actually listen to the story of Hanuman on a podcast, and then watch a little story of the Buddha in a animated short, and together they'll be about an hour long, or maybe less, like 30 to 45 minutes. And then you'll pick one of those stories, and I want you to write about how you see aspects of Hinduism that we are going to go over in the lecture reflected in those stories. And then just follow it up with anything you find interesting or something that stood out to you about Hinduism and the story that's sort of relevant to whatever the conversation is you're having. So construct a nice piece using those stories. This is an intro, so I don't expect you to, have like a serious depth on any of these things, but you should be able to just show that you've reviewed the materials, and you've listened to the stories. Indic religions are basically the religions of India, that describe the land around the Indus River. And a lot of my slides come from Dr. Ram Das Lam, and he is a Hindu. He actually was a Hindu monk, so he is really an expert in religion. But here we have Hinduism. Sometimes I don't know if we want to call it Hinduism, because that's a term given to the religion from outsiders. Even other words we might describe the religion with. But we have to think this is the oldest living religion, according to some. It could be debated. But we have to think, is it a religion? And this is something we'll look at, especially when we come to Hawaiian religion, because should it be seen that way? We're defining it in sort of a Western sense, as we would see Christianity. What is a Hindu? What is India? Are they one and the same? And this is the Sri Rangam temple, and it's a temple of Vishnu or Krishna, who's a form of Vishnu, and it's one of the largest Hindu temples. So the Indic traditions are known as the Dharma religions. Now, when you see those things in red, that means it might be a test question. So Sanata Dharma might be a little test question. Except when I give you quizzes, basically you just have to take them until you get them right. So there's no stress, but the answers might be in the slides, I'm just saying. So religion, life, eternal law, eternal virtue is part of the Dharma. In Sanskrit, the word means to hold together, and sort of in binding the whole universe. So we looked at religion, the word religion meaning to bind, and now we see it again in the word Dharma. The application of divine law to Indian society. And for the Buddhist, it's the law of the Buddha, sort of the universal law. So you sort of have Dharma is sort of like do your Dharma, do your duty, which is morality, which is the law. Gandhi said that all my life is sadhana, or religious practice, or how you go about your daily life. He thought that politics and religion were the same. The politics are how we relate to humans, and the religion is how we relate to God. So what is a Hindu? So again, Hinduism, a term imposed by outsiders. So Persians use it as a term for people of the Indus River, and it was used by Muslims for South Asians who were non-Muslims. So again, religion, sometimes we're using it to define who we are not, as much as who we are. Then it was used by the British for non-Muslims. So Muslims, and then you have non-Muslims, and we're calling them Hindus. So Hindu is defined in some ways by what it is not. It is not Muslim, it is not Christian, and it is not Parsi or Zoroastrian, and it is not Jewish. There's 5 religions that are part of the Indic traditions. One is Hinduism, the other is Buddhism, Sikhism, and Jainism. India has 1.4 billion people. The national language is Hindi. There's 16 major languages, 850 languages in daily use. Again, it's associated around the Indus River. A lot of, ancient civilizations are centralized around rivers. You had the Dashu people who were there from 4000 BCE, and then Aryans who came around 1500. So here's sort of the Indus Valley civilizations, and it was a thriving society. So that came to an end around 1500 BCE. So some people think it was due to the Aryans that the indigenous Dasu were their civilization kind of came to an end. Some people thought it was a military invasion, and others thought it was already in decline when the Aryans came, and yet others think that Aryans were also indigenous there. The reason they thought it was a thriving society is there were pre-planned cities, there were buildings, there were bathing areas, seafarers, agricultural practices were in place. There were male and female divinities already, Rudra, and Rudra was probably the roots of Ram, who is significant to the Hanuman story, is the story of Ram, Krishna, and yogis. They believe that there were already people practicing yoga there. They also had like toys and things. So they say, if they had toys if they had time to make toys for the children, that suggests that this was a society that was fairly advanced already. So Indic religion or Hinduism has no founder, no institution, 360 million gods. So hard to, I'm not going to ask you guys to memorize all those gods. Bhakti, devotion, is a key part of the religion. Yoga means to join, and soma means plant. These are 3 really important parts of the tradition. The goal is the liberation from samsara. So we're going to look into this samsara, sometimes called the wheel of samsara, and really it's the goal to reach enlightenment. So in the wheel of samsara, you have Atman, or the soul self, the internal karma collector, Brahman, which is the ultimate reality, the ground of all things, moksha, or the release, the unity with the Brahman, and Maya, which is the illusion that prevents us from doing our dharma. So we got to kind of understand what Brahman is first. Brahman is the absolute ultimate reality. It cannot be described, only realized. We can't say what it is, only what it isn't. Is it a creator? Some say yes, some say no. But you must give up all your attachments, including images of the divine, including religious ritual. So we'll go into more detail about all these things, but I think right now it's important to understand this sort of wheel and the sort of goal of enlightenment, and try to kind of get into it a little bit and think about it, you know. So this can be kind of confusing, because you have Brahma, which is sort of like the creator. It doesn't have to be a god, but it's something like a force of creation, at least. Then you have Brahman, which is the ultimate reality. And then you have Brahmin, which is the priest. So just keep that in mind. And then you have Atman, which is the soul or the self. So Atman is a drop of ocean, and Brahman is the ocean. So that's a good way to think about it. And then if we go back to the wheel, we sort of have this idea that there's Brahma, right? If everything is made up of Brahma, so then people must be made up of Brahma or Brahman. And if Brahma is unchanging, the Brahma doesn't change, right? But the world is changing, which is Maya. It's called Maya. So Maya is the illusion. Maya is everything is changing. So for one to reach enlightenment, they must find their Atman in Brahma. So your true self is in that thing that isn't changing. So how do you do this, right? So for me, I look at surfing. It's like, are you just stuck in the changing? Are you out of sync? Are you getting caught in the waves? Or are you like in sync with the Brahma, right? And you know, becoming in sync and is realizing that true Brahman, because once you realize Brahman, you're a part of that ultimate reality, right? So we can kind of look at it, keep looking at it in a little bit different ways. Karma, you know, we usually talk about karma as like, you know, if you have good karma, good things will come to you, right? That's a little off, right? Because to reach enlightenment, you actually have to also get rid of karma, because karma is binding, right? But it is how you get to, so the idea is you're in this cycle, the cycle of rebirth, and each time you reincarnate, if you have good karma, then you're going to reincarnate into the next level, right? If you have bad karma, then you might be a roach, you know. If you have good karma, you might come back as a, I don't know, more enlightened human. And what does that mean, right? It probably doesn't mean some rich person that's, you know, living large. It probably means a monk in India who's walking around naked. So, you know, but what we do in this cycle is our karma that binds us to the next cycle. So saying that, you know, I did this to that person, so I got good karma. don't know if that's really an accurate way to define karma, but I certainly say it all the time. So we all do, right? So when a person achieves moksha or liberation, their Atman or self returns to Brahman, the source, like a drop of water returning to the ocean. So Hindu text, we have the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Puranas. The Vedas were originally oral tradition, Aryan tradition, Sanskrit. It was considered a desecration to write them down, and they were written down after the arrival of Muslims. And they weren't introduced to Europeans until the 18th and 19th century. And they're so important to Hindu religion that it can be referred to as Vedic Dharma. So these are just the different breakdowns of the books. And so this is the Vedic sacrifice called the yajna. And only trained elites could perform this ritual. Only men who could read. Only men who could read. This yajna, it praises the gods. It feeds the ancestors and the guests. So Agni is a sacrificial fire, but it's also a god. Again, the soma, or the plant, could have been a hallucinogen consumed by priests and gods. So the Puranas is Smriti, what is remembered. So you can see the different types of texts that are in there. Here's the one we're gonna review, the Ramayana. So Ram, this is the story of Ram. So I won't read this because you're gonna listen to this. And he is a model for Dharma. So I'm kind of giving you a hint of what might be important already. And the whole thing is about the link of the Bible and one of the most popular sacred texts in the world. The story is about Ram and Hanuman, and he represents selfless devotion, and an incarnation of Shiva in the monkey form to serve Ram. And he has more shrines and temples than any other divinity. And his birthday is the first full moon of spring. And so this is a bhakti model. So according to my mentor, Dr. Ramdas, Ramanandi's view of enlightenment is not liberation or moksha. It's bhakti, which is devotion. So that's how you become enlightened. Enlightened is through your devotion. So you can see, there's different views even of this this mainstream sort of thought of Hinduism. The Bhagavad Gita is the largest epic poem, and it's part of the Mahabharata, and its important part of it is do your dharma, do not be attached to the outcome, and also bhakti, devotion. Okay, so another important thing we have is Om, which is the sacred sound. The world was created through Om. It's a mantra. It's the beginning and the end of the Hindu text. It might even be related to the word Amen, It's kind of the ineffable sound. Okay, so we're just gonna run through some of the gods. We can never really do much in depth, but I'm just gonna sort of have the slides here. You guys can always choose any of these things, anything that captures your mind for the final paper and for some of your posts where you get to choose. You can always go back to these and do research on them. So Shiva is sort of the main god of Ram, or the main deva. And so Siva Mahayogi, the great meditator. These are all different Sivas. So Shakti being the feminist essence of Shiva. So it's a single individual with male and female halves, but an all-encompassing nature of the divine. And then we have the Siva, the Lord of the dance. So the Trimurti is Brahma, Vishnu, and Siva. And again, we have, Brahma, creator, Siva, destroyer, Vishnu, protector, and they all have those male and female essence. So the female being Lakshmi, wealth, Pravarti, love, and Saraswati, art. Different sects, the Vaishnava, the Shaiva, and the Shakta. You have 10 avatars of Vishnu, Krishna, Rama, Sita. Again, one of them is Buddha. And as you can see, these gods can come in many different forms. So the Shakti, the feminine power, has actually two different essences to it. One is Durga, the warrior goddess, and Kali. Yeah. And so here's a clip from Indiana Jones on the Thuggee cult, which some people say that's where we got the word thug. And you can read up on that. That's interesting too. That would make a really interesting paper, either talking about how the movie portrays the Thuggee cult and Kali, or actually doing research, or both. So those are the kind of things you can do. Here we have more popular views of this. So again, I'm just going to kind of keep running through some of these. The Kama Sutra. I'm sure people have heard of that. Ganesh. So we have Indra, the ruler of heaven, the god of war and weather, the god of thunder. Agni, the god of fire. Shura, supreme light. We'll talk a little bit about the Hindu ascetics. So, asceticism is people who, like monks, right? So people who do ascetic practices, like they don't get married, or they don't have sex. They sort of they retreat from society, and it becomes sort of a power move, because if you don't need to eat, then you can't be controlled by food. If you don't need clothes, people can't sell clothing to you. Things like that. If you have your own form of medical treatment, from learning about plants and things like that, you don't need a doctor. So the ascetics, they do these practices. So Ram Dass says, how do I heat myself to burn away ignorance, right? Um, so it's really different, he says, than the Abrahamic traditions, which we'll look at next week, where there's sort of an idea that there's sin and that must be overcome and sort of atoned for. Now, I will argue that there is asceticism in the Abrahamic traditions. It's different. Jesus very well may have been an ascetic. He did not get married, had all kinds of strange healing techniques, lived out in caves, things like that. But in India, it's not removing sin. It's the removement of attachments. And so how do we do that, right? So it's the idea that renunciation is a physical act. So, people might like hold their arm up for like years, like 7 years. That's their tapa. So that's what that guy might be doing. And look what happened. His arm is just totally deformed. But that's how he's burning away burning himself down to this. He's not attached even to his own arm. He's willing to devote himself, right, to this practice so that he can find his true self, which isn't in his arm, right? It's in that greater Brahma. So this is the Ganges, river where they do some of their rituals. And then here's some of the yoga practices. So those are the textual sources, the Yoga Sutra, the Yoga Upanishad. So it's actually, yoga is in the sacred text. It's a way to control yourself, to surrender to the divine, and to find liberation. So Ram Dass says, yoga is not going to connect me, but it's going to help me realize that connection exists. It's not doing, it's remembering. And then you have the 8-limbed system. So restrictions, observances, postures, breath control. Yeah, you could definitely do a paper on yoga. So going back to that first part, renunciation is the greatest power. You can't be threatened if you don't care about death or poverty. So, Gandhi had the hunger strike. If nothing can be taken away from me and I don't have any needs, then I have a strength. And so you can't be bought. You're not afraid, So it's a real power too, a social power to be an ascetic, to do these types of practices. And then there's an important relationship between the guru and the student. So discipleship requires commitment through the cycles of life. So the guru and the student are bound through different cycles of reincarnation or samsara. That's a big commitment. And then you take a vow or virat, and then that's how you start your tapas, is you take that vow. So let's look at just a few of the holidays. So Diwali is the New Year's festival, or the festival of light. Holi, and that's Krishna's holiday in the spring. So spring festival. And then the pilgrimage, so the Maha Kumbh Mela. So we can't talk about Hinduism without talking about castes. So these are sort of little old numbers. So who are the Dalits? So the deletes are, the people who are considered too polluting to touch. They're currently referred to as Harijan or the scheduled class. So how do we get this in the first place? It is actually part of the tradition of the scripture, the sacrifice of Purusha. So it's part of the Vedic creation story. So the body used to recreate the world and humanity, the sacrifice of that body becomes the basis for the Vedic rituals. The eyes became the sun and the moon. The varna, or the color different between the humans, becomes different parts of Purusha's body. And the varna, or the colors, also compose the caste system. In the Upanishads, Purusha is no longer a person, but an abstract concept that relates to the self. So, how does this dissection pan out? So, this is the caste system. The Brahmin, which is the priest, comes from the mouth. The Kshatriya comes from the warrior and the politician class. That's the class that Buddha's from. The Vaishya come from the thighs, and the Shudras from the feet. And so that is the Dalit class, which may have been the Dashu people, the people that were there before the Aryans, either showed up or came into power. And so the Shudras are the people, they're the servants, right? They're the servants. So that's how we get to these deletes. But there is a challenge to this system. There has been response. So according to the classic Vedic view, only Brahmin males can achieve moksha. The Varna system, or this system, the caste system, it was outlawed in 1950. But it doesn't mean that it's gone. There's still people that are related to those classes because they're family, right? They're family and their occupation base. There's a critical response in the rise of sectarian Hinduism. And it's also sort of changing some of the views. Instead of liberation, let's live well and go to heaven. But also more of this transition to bhakti instead of liberation, as devotion over dharma. It's all about the love. Some people that challenge caste are actually Buddha and Ahmed Ambedkar, who was a Dalit and became a Buddhist and contributed to writing the constitutions. So I think that's all for today. So I will, tomorrow we'll go into a little bit deeper with the other traditions. So you can go ahead and watch the stories if you'd like. And I hope you enjoyed this lecture. It really is a interesting and complex and enlightening tradition. Okay, aloha everyone.